Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are back here today for episode 97 of the Friday Night Movie Club. We're coming up on the last 3 episodes of this show, by the way. So coming up very fast on episode 100. Well, we're here tonight to talk about a little bit of Sonic the Hedgehog, a little bit of DC, and a little bit of Black women in World War II as well. But joining us here today is our good buddy Cider. How you doing tonight, Cider?
I am great. I'm really glad that they brought my good buddy Shadow to the movie theater, silver screen, mainstream. I just like the character. I think it's fun. I think it's a really ridiculous twist on the already ridiculous world of Sonic. So,
yeah, I mean, you'll be pleasantly surprised by how they were pretty faithful to the character of Shadow in this movie, and then of course you add in Keanu Reeves to like the whole story. So it was like I think some of the Sonic fans would be pretty excited about what we ended up getting here. Then also joining us here today is a good buddy Rick Aragon. How you doing tonight, Rick?
I'm doing well. A little rundown, but I finally got all my Christmas shopping done, so I hope I didn't leave anyone off. I'm going from the list like 3 or 4 times.
I told people like 3 days ago, hey, look, I already spent money on gifts. Like, if you didn't get anything now, then you're just not going to get it. Sorry, there's nothing more I can do for you.
Yeah, but you know, it's all done. It's all packed. But I'm beat, and it's like I got it under the wire, so that's the important thing.
We are live
on talking about Santa Claus handles all that stuff.
Well, Santa Claus, yeah, he handles it. He got the list, but you know, I got a text saying, you know, could you jump in here because I'm short-staffed, because he's also had to deport some elves.
Oh,
he's that Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get to all the Christmas stuff here in a second. We are live here on YouTube and on Twitter. For some reason, there is an issue on Rumble where Rumble is not letting us through. So some of you guys hopefully are seeing us here. Okay, now we are seeing us here on Rumble now. Yeah, so I don't know what happened there for like literally the first like 3 minutes or 4 minutes or so was not on Rumble, but I guess they fixed their site and we're here live on all 3 platforms. So before I get into anything regarding Sonic the Hedgehog, because we can kind of Rolodex into this here, I need to talk about this trailer. This is a trailer that is going viral right now. Everyone's talking about it. This is a movie that's on Netflix, so that's the first red flag. And it's written and directed by Tyler Perry. That's the second red flag. And it is about Black women who were the real heroes during World War II. Because we all know in that great battle between the Nazis and the Allied powers, Black women were the deciding factor of that victory. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Sure.
absolutely. I mean,
Is
they
this
couldn't.
Medea goes to war
So much worse. It's so much worse
or
because
better?
it's
Medea
actually
the
trying
Earth
to be
Year.
serious.
Really,
That's what
this is
makes it worse.
serious.
This is not a comedy by any stretch of the. I know it's shocking revelation. This is not a comedy film. This is a true to heart drama movie about World War II. Here you go. I'll talk a little bit about this film here in a second. I just need to show you this because you guys have to suffer like I did.
Charity
Oh,
Adams.
thanks.
Welcome to the Women's Army Corps.
Delma, my wife and I have been talking about the problems we are having with the mail and our soldiers' morale.
Well, Mr. President, this assignment has proven to be a logistical nightmare. Even tried the Women's Army Corps.
Serious?
The White Women's Army Corps. Well, is there another?
Adams, you and the 6th AAA Battalion are headed to Europe.
Should you open it? The Postal Battalion? They think the only thing we good for is deliver some damn mail.
Would you like to see all?
It's World War II. Yes, that is the only thing you guys are good for, given the nature of what is happening during this time period.
Like, that's a victory. I don't know
Yeah.
about you. If I, in the middle of war, if you're getting sent into the enemy theater,
I mean,
by
what?
the way,
I'm sorry, I need to stop just for a second. In what fictional universe are a group of women complaining that they're not on the front lines of World War II? Especially black women during that time period. It's like, what are we doing here?
I keep telling people it's been a long time since anybody's been front row on war, and that's why everybody thinks they want to be front row on war. It's been a long time since we've had a group of veterans the size of the World War II veterans and the Vietnam veterans come back and say, "Hey, man, it's not as good as Rambo makes it look."
Well, I thought they were all getting ready to do that invasion of Japan. Weren't they all just going to be all black women who were going to storm into Tokyo and
No, the
overtake-
other
That'll be the
black
next
women,
one.
the other black women were helping Oppenheimer drop that nuke on Japan. So yeah.
Yeah, they formed the plane by linking arms together like
Mhm.
Chinese acrobats. But
Singing Negro spirituals. There's
that would be. What I want to point out is that'll be the next movie that Tyler Perry does. Is Tokyo Rose was a black woman. You wait. Right, exactly. Right over those airwaves. You, dear Japanese people.
Oh my god.
Tokyo Rose was framed. That's all I've got to say.
We were like one step away from like jump down, turn around, pick a pelt of cotton at this point. We might as well.
Right. H.G. Wells was a black woman. Come on, let's just go the whole way down history, huh?
Now, in fairness, nothing scares Nazis more than black women.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
To be fair, they would have a justifiable reason to be very afraid. So yeah, there you go. There is more to this.
Hangers, man.
Why?
How many are there?
All of them.
Oh my God.
Ladies, we have been ordered to provide hope. The soldiers have not heard from their loved ones, and their loved ones have not heard from them. When there is no mail, there is low morale. 6th AAA Battalion! Forward march!
So literally, they were just like, "What do we do with the Negro women during this war?" It's like, have them deliver the mail to the wives of the soldiers. It's like brilliant.
And they're marching through bombed out Europe.
Yeah, with the American flag. This is basically like 1917, the movie. It's basically the same quote.
Just take a minute and think, right? Just take a minute and say they're in France after they've forced the Nazis back out of France, right?
Yeah.
Let's say that they've done that. Let's say these women are. Let's not do that. Let's say they've been moved into. This is Britain. Let's say this is London. This is fresh from the Blitz, right? This is it's written in English, all right? So it must be London. So they're in the Blitz. There's this rubble around. Your like way of life has been obliterated. This legion of black women comes through. with the American flag while
And
your
immediately-
entire life is just smoldering rubble behind you, and they don't even look you in the eye. They just march right on by you, white man.
And immediately the reaction to everyone is like, "Oh my god, we're going to die."
Are you here to fight the war? No, we're here to sort the mail.
My question is, do King George VI and Queen Elizabeth salute them as they march down?
That'll be one of the scenes.
That the heroes are on the front line delivering the mail of illiterate soldiers all around the world.
This is gonna be like the big, like huge moment, right? Where everybody's like trying to rebuild and stabilize from the recent blitzing, and these black men are coming through with that big, powerful, we are America kind of like proud thing, but it zooms in on all their faces while all these people are covered in soot.
The mail carriers are literally marching through the streets of defeated Germany.
No, of defeated England. This is during the Blitz. Look, that poster right there is in
you're
English.
right. Oh
It
my
says
God.
"Save Fuel" in English. So they're in
Victory.
London. Like the Germans have been blowing the fuck out of London, and then this happens. Are you here to fight the war? No, we're here to sort the mail.
Oh god.
They did not send us because they thought we could do it.
Oh, the
We
little
are
white
here
girls are
because
inspired.
they are
Maybe
sure
they could
we
sort the mail
cannot.
next.
Wait, what was that line at the end again?
Send us because they thought we could do it. We are here because they are sure we cannot.
Well, I'm not sure if that's true. I mean, I think they sent them because they thought they could do it.
To be
I mean, that's the
fair,
reason that they sent
this is the type of job you get someone when you literally just want them to go away. Like they were probably being badgered, and then it's like we're in the middle of a war. There's clearly more important things on the horizon. It's like, fine, you want to be the glorified mailman? Go, just go, just go away.
I will point out. I know this is a little before the war. I would like to point out that it was Woodrow Wilson who forced the segregation of the postal service. Before him, it was integrated, but he was insistent because he was a racist. He was just the most racist president we've ever had.
Yep.
Probably more racist than the actual presidents who owned slaves. He was just virulent. He was just a horrible man. He thought Birth of a Nation was a documentary.
Yep.
Oh man, there's still more.
We are no strangers to making a shack a home.
What does that mean?
We are at war, and when you are at war,
Oh, okay. We are at war. It's like it's really we.
Yep. They're defending them from the Nazis that steal the coupons and all that spam mail.
Mm-hmm.
And they're gonna come there. They're gonna show up with scissors. They're like, we're here for the 10% off, nothing less. None of this 5%, 1% bullshit.
We need to stop those Italians from getting those pinups of Rita Hayworth and
That's
Betty
the
Grable.
truth.
Okay,
Right there.
those,
Yep.
those are our women. We need to defend.
How
our
do
women.
we make World War II about black women without getting laughed out of the room by every historian?
That's
of the
Tyler
ages?
Perry. They went to Tyler Perry's like small city state that he owns there. His lavish
His
multinational compound. Yeah.
Yeah.
His like, tri-state compound that he has there has its own like zip code. They went in there and they're like, Mr. Perry, we have a challenge for you. And of course, he's sitting atop a giant throne of like Medea statues holding him up. They're like kneeling, holding up his statue, holding up his throne. And he says, what is it? He says, how do we make black women the most important thing about World War II? And he fell out of his chair laughing. All 15 feet, he fell, boom, right there laughing. And then he did it.
He did like the J. Jonah Jameson thing, like unironically.
Wait until the end of this. I saw this earlier on Twitter and I thought it was fake. Go ahead and wait till you see the end of it.
God.
we are at war, and when you are at war, you make do. Unlike some other folks here, we have the most to prove. Now is where you show the proof.
Okay, pause. She says, unlike other folks here, we have the most to prove. Then they cut immediately to a bunch of soldiers running away from a plane, kamikazeing into the field. Okay,
Yes,
like
that
what?
Ma'am,
has been
there
pointed
are
out.
men literally being shot at by hostile foreign entities.
It's like when I saw that, I kept waiting. Like from visionary director Tyler Perry, I was like, "Where's Medea? Is this where Medea like comes down out of the parachute? Like
Is
I knew I couldn't land that shit."
what what the was it the three triple
Hallelujah.
A team these women went through was probably worse than D-Day.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You know
It's
those
like
guys that had
more
trench
intense.
foot. Nothing like getting a paper cut. Nothing like getting a paper cut.
it's like they literally made it about themselves. Like they did the meme unironically. They were probably sitting there watching like Dunkirk and like 1917 and all these like World War II movies, and it's like, well, how can we make the story set about black women? And then they came up with this
1917 is about
nonsense.
World War One, just for the
They
record.
start. They were watching Dunkirk, right? They were watching Dunkirk.
Mhm.
Like, well, where are all the black folk? And then they're like, oh, that's the
It's
Red
like, wait a minute,
Tails
those are-
movie. And then like, oh no, so there's no black. Well, we got to make a black person movie in the middle of World War II. And they're like, well, there's a black woman sorted some mail, and Tyler Perry's like, I got it,
Mhm.
got it.
And what are the odds of like literally just an exclusive platoon of black women and their sole job is just sorting the mail of the soldiers who are
Well,
actually doing the work?
Let's say that that's actually happened, right?
Mhm.
They were likely very, very fearful of their experience there, and in no way doing this ever.
You see, the movies like this is what killed Hollywood versus History. Do you guys remember the site Hollywood
Yep.
versus History? Because quite literally, they would have to talk about movies like this, and they would have to literally tap dance around the elephant in the room of none of this happened. Like this is all just to promote some DEI. Like but they can't come out and say it because it's like, oh, you guys are racist, you guys are Nazis, and then you're like, no, what? We're just gonna shut down the site. We're just not gonna do it anymore.
80 some odd years later, and we're still discovering untold truths about
Yeah.
World War II. Like, come on, no, we're done. It's over.
Look,
Like-
the History Channel has to have some kind of product here. I mean,
Right.
thanks to the Hitler, we've spent more nights with Hitler than Eva Braun did because of the Hitler, History Channel, or was it called the Hitler Channel? Because they kept showing nothing but World War II.
It was the Hitler channel. After midnight, it was the Hitler channel.
Yeah.
For sure.
Hitler was the MVP of that channel for quite some time.
But Billy Mays until he died. It was OxyClean and Hitler until 5 a.m. and your
It was
parents
Hitler
woke
and
up.
cocaine at 2 a.m. every morning. Oh,
Billy
man.
Mays here for the National Socialist Party.
But wait, there's more.
Billy Mays here. They answered the Jewish question.
Oh God.
That-
And
that's
we'll
a
throw in
Pitchman
El
episode.
Duce at no
That's
extra
a-
cost.
That's a Pitchman episode I want to see, where the two of them have to pitch the final solution. Oh my god, that would be so fucking awesome.
Oh my God! Could
I
you
love
imagine? Could you imagine being like at a liberal like improv class like in Chicago or like New York, and you just give him that card? It's like Billy Mays asking the Jewish question during World War II.
it? Billy Mays, but he's promoting Nazism.
Exactly.
Billy Mays here for the National Socialist Party. Have you noticed that only a certain group of people have a bunch of money and other people don't?
All I'm saying is they've been kicked out of a lot of countries, folks.
You heard a crystal knock, but wait, there's more.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
you know what? Maybe we should send them all to Palestine.
Yes. What is Let's talk about Palestine. They just get cut off the air immediately. Oh my God, this is so stupid. Okay.
Here, we have the most to prove. Now is where you show the proof.
Okay. Another thing. I gotta stop right here. It's like they're on this ship, and like all the women are like, and all the soldiers are like whooping around like all willy nilly. So I'm thinking to myself here, it's like, is this gonna be the story about how the black women had it bad too? They were on the boats that suffered rough waters. It's like you're still not actively being shot at during war.
Well, I do want to note this. There will be an obligatory slave joke here.
Oh yeah.
One of the lower IQ characters that's been one of
I
the
would
go-get-ems will say it.
I would be
Great.
absolutely stunned if the worst Jim Crow was not mentioned at least once in this movie. Stunned.
Well, is that
Are we
Michael Chiklis that's playing the general that has his balls in a
no,
vise?
no. That's the dude from what's his name? Breaking Bad. The guy who played.
Oh yeah, Hank. Yeah. It's like the two of them kind of like bleed together every now and then, like
I-
bald, angry, black, white
what
cop.
What I will say is that Sam Waterston is grossly miscast as FDR. He's a great Lincoln, but he's not. He doesn't look or sound anything close to Franklin Roosevelt. And Susan Sarandon as Eleanor, again, that's already a curious casting there. Granted, Edward Herman is dead. He was like the definitive FDR, but no, that's bad casting. Bad
The
casting.
only thing we have to fear is 2 a.m. on the History Channel.
Mm-hmm.
You could do a whole movie about FDR's mistress.
Which one?
Well, the one
The
that
black one.
Well, the one that he was with when he died.
That's
based on a true story.
Lucy Mercer.
That's
Lucy
the
Mercer.
secret when they open up the letters is that FDR has had like this African mistress that like the letters have been going through England to get to her.
Well, to be perfectly fair, I think Eleanor.
He just refers to her as Jungle Bunny throughout the entire letter.
Oh my gosh!
But that was his pet name for her. Like it wasn't a racial slur. It was just his friendly name
Oh
for
my
her.
No. A real one would be Eleanor Roosevelt would have the mistress.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's right. And they're
Lorena
aliens.
Lorena Hickok was allegedly Eleanor's mistress.
When you get a look at Eleanor, you'll probably believe that one more than you believe FDR had a mistress.
I knew a coworker who thought that Eleanor was some sort of sex goddess. So.
Wow.
Oh, here we go.
To prove. Now is where you show the proof. This is our mission.
Okay. So the name of this movie is The 6888, and it stars Kerry Washington, who black women love because she played what's her face in Scandal, who was basically just a black woman who had an affair with a white guy, and everyone loved
Did
that.
she become president or the first lady?
Somewhere along those lines. It's pretty close to that. And then Oprah's in this movie for some weird reason, and then
Wait. It's a black woman centric music. I believe that's in Oprah's like God contract, like when God put her together. That was no, it was when she sold her soul to the devil. As she said in her contract, I have to be in every movie that glorifies black women. Period. Forever.
Yeah. So the film is
in the Crossroads. Is that where she sold with Robert Johnson?
It was where she sold Maui in order to gain Maui, right? Like you sacrifice the souls of Maui in order to gain Maui, right?
The guy from
It's on a
Moana?
cape
She sacrificed the guy from Moana?
No, he was part of it.
Oh, okay.
So the film is based on an article that was written in 2019 about a story of, I'm not making this up, the 6,888th Central Postal Directory Battalion that were all black and all female during World War II. So
somebody dug through miles of Wikipedia to find that. Miles.
Yes, someone found that in like the Necronomicon somewhere buried deep in there in the crevices of the earth.
Let me show my ass for just a second here. I'm not really going to show my ass. I just want to show something I worked
figuratively
on here,
show my ass.
Right, figuratively. So a long time ago, I had a cool idea that I thought was a cool idea, and I kind of backed away from it when I realized not so cool idea. So if you don't know, a long time ago during World War II, there was the Women's Air Service pilots, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And the object of what they did was that on the Western Front, they would go into the runways and they would fly the planes so that the fighter pilots could sleep on the ground going across on train or by truck or however they were getting to the next landing strip so they could sleep and get rest on that run. So they would fly. Now, there's only a couple instances where the girls got into any kind of fighting. And there was one in particular, and they called her Tommy Gun. And she was Tommy Ann Thompson or something Thompson. That was her last name. They called her Tommy Gun, and she got shot down. So I created this character with the intention of like building off of that legacy that there was like one fighter pilot that actually wanted to take it to the Krauts, you know? One lady fighter that was they weren't allowed to. That was one of the things they weren't allowed to engage because again, they didn't trust them. So, but yeah, no, she was taken down, and so I based this character Vesper Barnes off of her, and she goes on a great adventure like that. But I didn't have to dig through miles of Wikipedia to find that. I just had to search like, what did women do during World War II as related to planes? And Google was like, oh yeah, they made sure that the pilots who fought the war could sleep. I was like, oh okay, cool. That's neat. Did anybody die? And they're like, yeah, there was one of them that really wanted to fight and went and found a fight, and she got shot down.
Yeah, I feel like that in like 5 to 10 years, there'll be someone who does a deep dive into this and figure out this whole bunch of crap. But at that point, it's gonna be like, well, the movie's already made, so everyone thinks it's real now. So,
I would love it if it was PewDiePie.
so you would be the one.
Hey, bros, I want to talk to you about this black woman movie.
I don't know about you guys, but I actually did some research on this. It turned out it was all lies.
Every bit of it. It was absolute ceiling gang.
Yeah.
But the situation is that the communists love making movies with numbers. I've noticed that. Like the number is the title. I've noticed that communists really like doing that because you go and take a look at what the Chinese are putting together. Most of their movie titles are like some weird number jibbity jabbity stuff that references a certain battalion, a certain date, a certain serial number on a machine gun or whatever that was involved in a fight. That kind of stuff. It's always the numbers. So if you're looking for what communists are getting up to, the title is mostly numbers.
What? So 10 Things I Hate About You is a commie film? Is that what you're saying?
That the 10 is only a little bit of part of that title. It would be like 10 and then 10 things, but like 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 things. You know what I mean? That's where you want mostly numbers, then little words in there.
Yeah. I get you. Well, look, I'm probably the most charitable of the group here. Is that I don't see anything specifically wrong with making a film about, I guess, somewhat obscure historical figures. We did this. I was thinking we did this with Chevalier a year or two ago, where we found a black French composer who apparently was better than Mozart. I think the problem is that,
as always.
Well, yes. I think the problem
Otherwise,
is
they wouldn't have made the movie.
that as well. I don't think you really need to create a whole film about battalion and just say, well, it's about mail sorters and make that sound rather heroic. I mean, one or two figures, I guess, would be fine, but to say the whole
I mean, it's a weird thing with Hollywood where it's like, especially if you're a writer and direct, like, because of this weird racially idolatrous type of like mindset, it's like black filmmakers feel like they have to make films specifically for black audiences, right? So when they make these films, they have nothing but the black audience like in their mind, and they're really the only ones that do this. Like even with like some Hispanic filmmakers, like, yeah, they'll do stuff for Hispanic audiences, but then they also do stuff for like mainstream audiences too. You don't ever see that with black audiences. It's always, we have to do this specifically for a black audience, and that's kind of why a lot of their stuff gets pigeonholed to the point where it's like, okay, I know this is a Netflix film, it's not like a theatrical release, but at the same time, it's like, how many people out there are you think really going to be interested like in a story like this? I mean, we're talking about a target demographic of like black women aged like 40 to like 65. Like that's pretty much your real bread and butter here. And outside of that, it's like I don't know who else really truly cares about this film that may or may not be true given the source of this to begin with. So but we see this all the time here, just getting to a point where it's like, maybe the reason why you don't have a lot of black directors or filmmakers that get the same opportunities as the white ones is that the white ones are actually making broad appealed movies and you guys aren't. Everything, maybe that's part of the problem.
Well, could be. I mean, there have been one or two projects about the Tuskegee Airmen, and they're not obscure now. So I mean, it's possible you can make films about this. There's always that was it Bessie Coleman, who was a black pilot in the early days of aviation. Certainly, she could merit a biopic. Certainly, Sojourner Truth could merit a biopic. We already had one about Charlie Chisholm. You can make biopics. I don't know if having black women marching through the streets of a ruined city waving the American flag is some, I don't know what, I don't know why you have that specific idea.
Yeah.
There's nothing, again, I'm more generous about this film than you guys are. But it's still the selling point when you have the black female saying, we're gonna have it, we're the hard, we have the hardest job, and you cut to someone running for his life as bombs are going
Mhm.
off all around him, and you think, well, maybe you don't have the hardest job in
It's
the
like
entire
you're
world.
trying to make the whole point of this film is trying to make the people involved in this self-important, like they were just as important as the people who were actually on the battlefield. And it's like, I hate to break it to you, you kind of weren't. Like you weren't that important. It's like if a few people didn't get love letters through like World War II, it wouldn't be the end of the world. Unlike if the people had actually lost World War II, probably would have been the end of the world. So like you're trying to make it seem like that your contributions are at the same level as everyone else here, but it's like you're really not. I mean, I just hate to break it to you.
Could you
Well,
make a film about Haile Selassie?
I'll give you a good parallel, okay? Captain America, in his story, was originally a USO clown. He was meant to go around and do this crazy stunts with all these girls that were high kicking, and he was holding a motorcycle over his head, and he was punching Hitler and all that stuff. And then he transcended from a role that was told to him that mattered to a role that actually mattered to the war. And that's what I want to stress with this point I'm making is that we saw this in Captain America when he was told that he was important. He's got to put on a show to give the boys some morale. We got to keep everybody happy and thinking about how great America is. Selling those war bonds, son, keeping the war machine going. And so then he realizes that he can't be that that's not what his purpose is. It wasn't what he was created for. And so he does that. These women aren't going to do that. They can't. That violates history. So you end up having like these black women go into Berlin and take out Hitler. They go find him in the bunker, beat his ass. Is that what happened?
With like Rick Ross song playing in the background for no reason. It's like, yeah, sure.
No. It's Wu-Tang. Bring a motherfucking ruckus. That's what it is.
Those women are gonna tell Ava what's what.
Well, I got
Girl,
another.
you don't need him. You can take over the world all by yourself.
Well, I do got another trailer to talk about here, and this is probably the most controversial one of the day because this is the new Superman, the James Gunn Superman movie that he's been yarking about now for 2 years.
We're not going to cry at this, are we?
I don't know. I haven't seen this one yet because I'm gonna be completely honest. I haven't been too motivated to, but I know it's out there. Everyone is like, making videos about it. So I guess we'll play a little bit of this. This is the James Gunn Superman. Now, keep in mind that there's a lot of people out there that are all like, Zack Snyder, he's a piece of crap. We're all on James Gunn bandwagon now. Not defending Snyder, he's the bag of douche too, but this is what you guys wanted. Okay. So here we go.
Before you play it, Jacob.
What?
Do realize that you might get copyright claim for this. I've seen people getting copyright claim for the. Okay, just letting you know. So
yeah, like I said, they can try all they want. I don't care about Warner Brothers. At this point, you guys are gonna die in like a month or two anyway. So there you go.
Yamcha.
Literally the Yamcha pose, like right out of the gate. So it's like we're basically screwed. It's like our comic book Jesus character has just got BTFO. This isn't gonna go well.
Is the TARDIS coming to save him?
it's going to be those women from the 388.
Yeah. We got your mail, Superman.
Is he gonna walk into a tornado and die like the last guy?
No, it looks like he's definitely going to die of a heart attack, though.
Yeah.
What's odd is
What's
that
gonna happen.
I mean, to be fair, he looks like he's one of those people who survived a couple of heart attacks already.
Right.
He's still kicking.
Son, Taco Tuesday might be my last, just so you know.
It's a rather simple house.
Yeah.
There's not going to be like any 70s pop music in here, right? Is that why the copyright claim is going to be a thing?
Not that I know
I don't
of.
think.
It
I
sticks
think
to
it's
this.
just a trailer. I think it's just a trailer that they're going to
It's a
copyright.
teaser, actually.
Yes,
It's
I've
it's
seen
a
people
teaser
claim.
to the trailer. It's the Flash. No, it's even worse.
It's Crypto.
Home. Take me home.
Country Road.
This is where the beams of like Agent 47 was coming from. I don't know why no one like kind of thought that through.
No, they did.
Wasn't Nicholas Hoult in the running to play Superman? And so he ends
Well,
up playing. Lex Luthor.
ironically enough, he was also in the running to play James Bond. So this is kind of like a play on top of a play.
No, now it's going to be Josh
All at
O'Connor.
once. Let's do it all at once.
Sure, why not?
Superman.
I can. Well, I'm probably gonna say this just a little bit, but I can already tell you one problem I'm having with this movie. But this is kind of what I suspected out of this James Gunn Superman film, is that they're basically trying to set up all the other James Gunn universe films through the use of this movie. And the problem with doing that is that if this movie is not good, no one's gonna give a shit about any of the other films you guys got planned out for the next 5 to 10 years.
Well,
So,
it does run the risk of making the movie look like a trailer for other movies versus an actual Superman movie.
yeah. Not
And
to
I really-
mention it's written and directed by James Gunn, which is a whole other thing
Yeah,
we'll talk
and,
about here in a
and
second.
again, I barely know who any of the other characters are.
I mean, I know who they are, but it's like that's just what it feels like. It's like, oh, here's Hawk Girl, here's Lex Luthor, here's this character and that character. It's like, are you guys pulling like an Iron Man 2 where you're basically just like giving us a trailer to future movies?
Wait a minute. You need Lex Luthor in this Superman movie. Now,
I mean, I know for this movie you need him, but it's like all the other characters on top of Lex as well.
Are you going to get Otis? Because he was my favorite from the Superman movie.
So I wanna explain why Superman is in a beat up state, because I don't like it, but James Gunn explained this in a Variety interview we did after the trailer came out. And so a teaser trailer, whatever we're doing here. So what he said is that Superman is symbolic of our nation, and that it is in rough shape right now. And that's why at the beginning of the movie, Superman is in rough shape, and he goes throughout the movie symbolizing the kind of stuck nature that our nation has been in between the old world and embracing a new world that is being born now. And he didn't do, and I really give him credit for, is he didn't say that MAGA's bad, and he didn't say that Joe Biden's bad, he didn't say that Kamala's bad. He kind of played it out that everybody's at everybody's throat right now, and Superman is exemplary of how confused and painful that is for all of us. And that's what he's going through in this movie, is the other heroes want to kill, and they are killing. He doesn't want to do it, and he seems to be having a very hard time with trying to convince them to let go of this immediate justice concept. And so I don't think it has anything to do with Snyder's stuff. They're just really trying to bait the Snyder bros in. I think that's the whole reason why Corn is Wet was the one that was chosen. It's because he looks like, Henry Cable's little brother. So that's why, because they're just trying to bait these guys in. Because if you take a look at it, you zoom out at it, it looks like somebody's trying to do Snyderverse, but with all the filters off, with all the angst off. So there's that little bit of Snyder slime on it, a little bit of Snyder slime And then there's James Gunn stuff coming through. Now I fully expect some like if you still call me Superman melancholy orchestral remix to be in the full trailer. I fully expect that. Kryptonite, that whole thing. That'll be in there for sure.
It's a very curious description of why Superman speed up, if you want to make it symbolic, because when the first Superman came out in what 78, you're still going through the after effects of Vietnam and Watergate, and what do you end up with this
The civil rights movement as well.
You have this remarkably optimistic movie where they were not being ironic, they were playing it totally straight and just had everything going for it. So I'm puzzled as to why he would imagine that right now is worse than that. Well, I don't know.
Well, it is. It is because we are not leaving a state of unity, where that turmoil was kind of seated, right? We were very unified in the 50s. We were very unified mostly through the 60s, and then the 70s, the wheels came off. And so the situation here is that once again, the wheels have come off, communication has fallen apart, but it's much worse in that we have the internet to insulate us from conversation. You don't happen upon a protest of hippies saying nuclear power is bad anymore. You just see some assholes sitting in the middle of a road somewhere and they've glued their hands to the pavement. So you're not having a dialogue with them anymore. You're not trying to understand them anymore. You're trying to get them off the road so you can get to work. And that's where we're at. And that's why Superman is like in this. What I appreciate about what he did with this trailer here, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't present Superman as being the solution. They present Superman as trying to find the solution. And I always like that because Superman possesses the superior morality, the unmovable morality. That's why he's a unique character. His way of viewing is always the right way. But sometimes it takes him a while to prove to everybody or himself to realize what the right way is. And I really appreciate that James Gunn didn't introduce us to like, hi, I'm Superman. If you don't go my way, you're a villain. I'm glad he didn't introduce us to that, and I'm glad we didn't continue the legacy of Sadman. So
I also hope that he tones down the nonsensical comedy that we typically see with basically every James Gunn movie. Like this has to be a somewhat subdued, like obviously not as much as like the Zack Snyder, but this has to be a somewhat subdued movie because, like I said, there's so much riding on this, and literally the future of Warner Brothers comic book movies are riding on this as well. So it's like they can't. Even though they're kind of giving him the reins, let him be the writer and director, they can't let him go full James Gunn with this one.
Yeah, you can be jokey. I mean, the first one did have moments of humor, mostly through Lex Luthor and Otis, but it was never like over the top or just brazenly idiotic.
I want to point out this.
Oh, go ahead.
I want to point out this. James Gunn, to his credit, could have gone with LexCorp and made the X a very big point in order to like give in to everybody hating Elon's guts right now. He could have definitely have done that because that was already on the board before he got involved with Trump when this movie was still being filmed and stuff. So he could have done it, but he didn't. He made it Luthor Corp. And I've really got to give him credit because Lex is going to, there's no way he doesn't become a parallel to Elon just simply because he's a tech billionaire. But they deliberately attempted to not do that right out of the gate. So I really got to give him credit for that.
Mm-hmm. Let's finish up the last bit of this trailer here.
So people think he's fighting Ultraman in this, so that Lex causes a multiversal drift and Ultraman shows up.
No more multiverses.
That
no
would
more
be
multiverses.
A horrific idea.
I'm sorry. I mean, I've seen the trailer, and I don't understand why grown men openly cry. I'm just puzzled.
I'm pretty sure there's a video of somebody online literally crying, like on the internet.
I've shared that. I think I shared that with Rob, though. To be fair, I have shared a couple. They're crying. There's one guy who's like in his early 20s, and yeah, I can understand he has the mind of an 8-year-old, but a man who looks like he's somewhere in his 40s, and he's also like wiping away tears. No,
I say it's like,
I
you
can't
know,
wipe away tear
if
over a
you're
trailer.
if you're legitimately autistic, then it's like, yeah, I get it. Your brain doesn't work the way that, you know, normal brains do. But it's like, if that's not even like a thing for you, then I still have to question. It's like, yeah, what do you think? So here's what I think about the trailer based off what I seen. To me, it seems like either one or two things is happening. One, he's trying to show you as little of all the best bits of the film as he can to keep you interested. Like I said, this whole thing is built on interest. In all honesty, if this is going to be any success whatsoever, this is a movie that absolutely needs to be a $1 billion film. If DC or Warner Brothers has any shot of anyone giving any crap about any of the movies they have come planned out. What I fear from this is that, you know, I see a whole bunch of characters that are recognizable if you're a DC fan, but to me it seems like that this movie is going to be used kind of as, like I said, a commercial for a whole bunch of other projects that they have planned that's going to be on HBO Max, and, you know, the films are going to be released like down the line. They're trying to get you, so it's like, here's Superman, but here's all these other people that you can see in their own projects in 3 to 5 years, and that's kind of what it feels like to me watching this, right? Secondly, is that, like I said, outside of the first Guardians movie, I'm just typically not a big fan of James Gunn style of filmmaking, and this is a film where, like I said, he has basically all the range. It depends on, you know, how much power they give him in this film to do essentially whatever he wants. If he's gonna go full James Gunn and do basically like a cartoonish take on a Superman, even though to his credit, he's claiming up to this point that he's going to be as faithful as, you know, this era of Superman as he possibly can. So I don't think that he'll be stupid enough to try to add in his little flair to the film. Like, just do a solid Superman movie, and then think Warner Bros. Will be happy. We'll see how that happens in the next year. To me, like I said, you know, it's just kind of a generic looking film for the most part, and maybe it's because they're trying to play it safe for that reason. But there's nothing in this movie that's making me like, oh my god, I have to go see this. Like right now, it's like, I know some of the actors that are in the film. I like some of the actors that are in the film, but nothing is really motivating me to be like, oh, I need to be there day one for this event because this is going to change the course of the world. It's like, I don't know if I believe that.
Well, I mean, you've got a really tough act to follow. I don't think there's ever been any Superman film or Superman connected film that has really outdone the first one from, was it 78? All the others and all the other Supermen, as competent as they were, except for Cavill, who can't act, but he's beautiful to look at, as competent as they were, and as strong of production that they had, none of them are as well remembered or beloved as the first one. But Jacob did point out something I think is true. The first one succeeds because they took the premise seriously. They took everything seriously. Yes, they add some funny bits, but they played it perfectly straight. Maybe this trailer is an indication that they are going to go back to that, make it perfectly straight, not try to be either too jokey like the Guardian movies or too somber and serious like the Brandon Routh version, which was
Yeah.
just morose. It's just so dour, so miserable. But who
The
knows?
only thing they can do right now to really fix this, to be completely honest with you, is to start humanizing Superman. Rather than showing us Clark Kent doing things, because we understand that Clark Kent's going to be doing things. What we need to see is like Superman being with children. We need to see him just helping kids in their regular lives. What we saw Christopher Reeves do with that little girl and the cat. We need to have him like rescuing orphans from cliff sides. Give in to the cliches about Superman, but play them earnestly. Show him in these advertisements doing him like plugging a volcano with a giant rock. You know, you guys can do that in CGI. It'd take an afternoon. So just block. He just plugs a volcano, and that's the end of the volcano. It's solved. But just have him doing that stuff, because that is what people miss about Superman. They took him way too seriously in the Snyderverse. They didn't take him seriously enough in the Justice League. And then they didn't really do him any justice when they tried the show with CW show with Lois, Superman
Smallville.
and Lois. No, the
Oh,
Superman and Lois
Superman and
show.
Lois.
Yeah, I thought you were
Yeah,
the other one.
where that was just really just couldn't make sense of what a white man superhero should look like. They just couldn't give Tyler, the actor there, the permission to be an aspirational hero. He had to be,
Really?
had to always like stay just beneath that and make sure that Lois was still the one that had like the more forceful, dominant attitude, and that Lex Luthor was still somebody that could still present a threat to him. You know, and that it irritated me.
Oh well,
So
I never saw that one. I mean, I remember. I think was it Lois and Clark was more like a romantic comedy. That's how it was sold.
Well,
With
no, that's in the 90s. That's in the
yeah, yeah,
90s.
yeah.
This new one, this Lois, Superman and Lois on
Lois.
CW, is very. It's based on that Lois that told Superman that she is better than him and because she earns less. They made the whole gender pay gap part of their role in the Flash Arrowverse crossover. They were talking
Mhm.
about the gender pay gap, and that's Superman, and so
How
that's his
curious.
life.
How
Yeah,
curious because
so he has that Lois. It's constantly like feminism, feminism, feminism on the top of him, and he's like, "I am literally bulletproof and can breathe in space. What do you want me to do?"
well, actually, I would have thought that if they both worked at the Daily Planet, she would have earned more because he was pretty much starting when she was already there established and she
Well,
was
she
already a
outproduces
legendary
him.
figure. Yeah, she was already a legendary figure at the Daily Planet. The only person
60% of Superman's day is spent saving Lois Lane from the scoops she's trying to get. Okay. How can he be putting out articles to compete with her? But she's like, and then in the middle of trying to break up this gang fight when the cartels were fighting in underground Metropolis, Superman rescued me before I could be captured and harmed. It's the front page of the Daily Planet. Of course, she's making more money. And Clark's like, damn it, I had to save you so I couldn't get my job done.
yeah,
So
well,
he's stuck
well,
covering the weather.
now the was it the 40% of the time that he's not rescuing Lois, he's rescuing Jimmy Olsen? Is that what you're saying?
Right. Perry White's like, Kent, what do you do all day? Man, you don't get anything done around.
Yep.
No, he can type real
I
fast. We
will-
saw that in the first movie.
Yeah, I will say this. I know our buddy Orange Hat was very, very upset. That kind of, I guess you can call it the elephant in the room with James Gunn, because if you guys recall, it was about 7 years ago now. James Gunn, while he was raging out against Trump and Trump supporters on social media, people were like, "Hey, what's all these tweets here about kids and pedo jokes and all this other stuff?" And then he deleted a whole bunch of his tweets and got temporarily fired, only to get rehired like a year later and whatnot. And the whole thing is that, supporting James Gunn would be, endorsing all that stuff. Here's what I'll say about that. It's like, if this was James Gunn's first project since then, maybe you can make that argument, but obviously he's done at least 3 or 4 films now up to that point. So sadly, whether you like it or not, people have essentially forgotten what James Gunn said and kind of the person that he was several years ago. I know he's toned down himself a lot based on, where the personality that he had before that whole thing blew up, and that's probably because he doesn't want people to go back after him based on things he said again. With that said as well, it's like, especially when you had, if you recall, it was the entire cast of Guardians of the Galaxy, which included Chris Pratt too, by the way, just throwing it out there, came out like in support of him. I think that's what ended up leading to like Disney saying like, okay, we'll give him a second chance. That's even if you truly believe he was ever fired to begin with, which is kind of like, they could have just pulled a deal behind the scenes, but like, yeah, just sit out a year and make it seem like they were punishing you, and then we'll bring you back and you do the third movie. Could have been one of those things too as well. So yeah, look, I get it. I'm not going to sit here and defend James Gunn on any level, because I certainly haven't forgotten who he is and what he said and stuff like that. But it's like, if you were going to draw the line, if I'm not going to support anything revolving on James Gunn, that line's probably something you should say like 3 years ago, when the second Suicide Squad came out, which I believe is his first project back since that whole thing. Like I said, he's had about 3 or 4 movies out right now, so it's like, it is what it is. But to that point, I will say this. I'm still trying to answer the question how anyone thought James Gunn was qualified to run an entire studio, which is what he's been tasked of doing right now, because I still haven't seen anything from him that will say that I will be comfortable with him in that role to begin with. I know some of our guys here have a lot more faith in James Gunn than I do. Tom Connors is obviously a big fan of James Gunn and his work. I know they've talked about that on their show. I just don't have that same faith in him. I just don't. I'm not, even before this whole thing went out, I just never really a huge fan of him and his style of filmmaking. That's just a personal decision for me, but who knows? We'll see where this one goes here. But like I said, they have all their eggs in this basket, and if this basket fails, like it's not gonna matter if you're we're gonna get a Mr. Terrific movie in 2020. And no, you're not. Like no one's gonna care. None of these films are gonna come to fruition if this one is not a home run. So good luck with that one, Warner Brothers.
What's Mr. Terrific?
It's one of the characters from DC. He was in the trailer, but that's
Yeah, like I would know.
He was the black guy with the big T on his face because he's terrific.
yeah. And with that said, I guess we can now move on to the movie in question that we're supposed to be reviewing tonight, Sonic the Hedgehog 3. So let me ask you guys this just real quick. Does anyone actually remember playing the OG Sonic the Hedgehog on the Sega Genesis, or as some people like to refer to it now as the Mega Drive? Do you remember playing the first Sonic the Hedgehog game, that one that had that not for real resale sign on there? That back in the early 90s?
I think the last game I played was Donkey Kong. Please stop.
Oh, on which system?
It was an arcade. That's how long ago it was.
You've never played like a home system?
No.
So you've never picked up a controller ever in your life, is what you're saying here.
Well, I did once. When what was that killing game that was very popular at the time?
Call of Duty.
I don't know. There was some sort of killing
Mario?
game that was very popular. No, I just remember
Killing game.
It was some sort
Mega
of
Man.
I don't remember. I just remember that all I did was I couldn't quite figure out the control, so my little character just kept spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning, and I couldn't quite get out. Halo, thank you. That was it. I couldn't get out of the room because I just could not figure out how to move it. So my little character, while everyone else was going around doing all sorts of fun things, I just kept kind of going in circles. So that was the last
True
time
story. My mom tried to play Sonic the Hedgehog 2 one time on the Sega Genesis, and we all sat there and silently laughed at her as she struggled to get out of the chemical plant, which I don't know if you guys realize that is level 2 of the game, and never tried another video game ever in her life since that moment. So, but yeah, I have a very long history with Sonic the Hedgehog. Like I said, the Sega Genesis was my first gaming system. To me, it's still the best gaming system of all time. Second will be the PS2. That's a conversation for another day. But I remember playing all the Genesis era Sonic the Hedgehog games. So it would be like Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Sonic 3, Sonic Spinball, Sonic 3D Blast. I feel like I'm missing one in between there. It wasn't Sonic CD because that was actually Sega CD at the time, but I feel like that there's another one in that whole era too. But yeah, I was the big fan of Sonic the Hedgehog. Wasn't as much as Mario. Mario just wasn't my thing, but the little blue bastard hedgehog was certainly great. Do you remember all the TV shows that he had at the time period? He had the original animated cartoon with what's his name, Jaleel, what's his name, last name, guy who plays Urkel. What's his last name? I can't remember.
Jaleel White.
Yeah, White. There we go. Yeah, he voiced the character of Sonic the Hedgehog. Then I believe he had like Sonic AM, which was another one. It was more of a grittier style Sonic the Hedgehog than obviously the other one was. But Sonic dominated the 1990s. Like, I mean, if you're as much as play as Mario had in the 1980s, Sonic actually dominated the 1990s. As you recall, when they were producing Sonic the Hedgehog 3 in the Sega Genesis back in the early to mid 90s, Michael Jackson was actually tasked with doing the soundtrack for the video game, and he actually did a couple of songs for it. Apparently the whole reason why it fell apart was two reasons. One, Michael Jackson was not pleased with the sound quality capabilities of the Genesis at the time, right? So he was a perfectionist, and his music with compression just wouldn't sound like where he wanted to sound like in that game system. So it didn't really work out there, even though some of his tracks remained in the game up until its completion. Then of course you had the whole, like, you know, kid touching allegations in the early 90s as well, which definitely didn't help the situation. But he was a big fan of that series at the time, and yeah, exactly, it wouldn't help matters much at all. But like I said, this thing was absolutely huge. So of course we get here about almost 30 years later, and now we're making video game movies off of Sonic the Hedgehog. And up to this point, I mean, when we talk about video game movies, like, we have a very, very bad track record of films, because for whatever reason, Hollywood cannot get live action adaptations of video games right. I mean, we all suffer through, was it 7 Resident Evil movies, and not a single one of them was any good outside of the first one, if you want to call that one a decent game. But
I never saw it.
Yeah, you're not missing much. Like, the only video game movies I can think of is that, the first Mortal Kombat, The first Resident Evil, I mean, it was all right for a horror film. Street Fighter was such slop. We watched Street Fighter on a movie night like last year, and like it was actually so bad it was good. So that one I would probably put over,
The
but not for the
bad
Great Resident.
guy, the bad guy had Sketcher, had like flying Sketcher shoes. That was crazy. They
He
lit
also
up.
tried to seduce the Asian lady with an incredible dance routine. Do you remember that one as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great time. But here's what happened. If you guys recall, back in 2019, Paramount, which is leading the film here, they released the trailer for the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, and all the Sonic fans were like, "What the hell is this? What is this? Like, this is not Sonic. This looks like, you remember the scene in Jumanji where the kid tries to cheat and then they turn him into a monkey for the remainder of the movie? He looks like that kid, like motion capture monkey kid. That's what he looked like here. And people absolutely had a fit. People tore this to absolute shreds. And to Paramount's credit, they did not attack the fan base. They did not say that you guys were a bunch of toxic, whiny man babies or anything like that. They said, okay, we hear you. We're going to delay the film, fix the design, and we're going to come up with a much better Sonic the Hedgehog than the one that you got here. And to their credit, that is exactly what they did. They came out with a far superior Sonic the Hedgehog design than they had before, which almost makes you wonder, how did they screw up the first one so bad? But as a result of that, the first movie came out. Jim Carrey played Dr. Robotnik in the film. I believe, actually, it's the only movies that Jim Carrey has actually done since Kick-Ass. If you remember, Jim Carrey filmed Kick-Ass 2, and that was a big thing. And then the Sandy Hook shooting happened. And then Sandy Hook shooting happened. He said that, look, well, all due respect, I can't promote this film because of the violence. So he kind of like went away from the whole thing. And he hasn't really acted in any movies outside of that as a result. But he really loves Sonic the Hedgehog. He really loves playing the character of Dr. Robotnik. It's a a movie that's generally geared towards like younger audiences too. You can take families to it, so that whole aspect of him draws him. So he's only really worked on Sonic the Hedgehog movies in like the last 10 years. And a little sidebar here, if you guys see the trailer here, we'll play it in a little bit, of the third film, he actually legitimately grew his hair out for the movie and then had him cut his hair off like live, like while they were shooting. So that's how much he's been committed to this whole thing. But they fixed the Sonic design. It ended up being a big hit. Now, I think it got undercut a little bit because the movie came out literally like a month or two before COVID, so it probably didn't have the opportunity to make as much as it probably would have, but it was still a big hit. I think it ended up making about $450 million worldwide on the first Sonic the Hedgehog movie, so they were like, okay, let's go ahead and do another one, because apparently people really, really like this one, and that's exactly what they did, and then we got Sonic 2, and Sonic 2, I'm just going to be honest with you, wasn't really as good as the first one. And I think the big problem was that they decided that, you know what we're going to do? We're going to focus on the human characters. So there's an entire plot line of like multiple human characters that no one cares about. More specifically, the wife's sister in the film. There's a whole Rachel, and there's a whole arc about her and her wedding, and it just goes on forever. It's not funny. The character is not funny at all.
Right.
And there's a lot of people who pointed that out. So when the third one came around, I feel like Paramount took to heart all the complaints people had about the second one. It's like, yeah, you know, let's not do any of this. Let's not do any of these things.
Well, here's the thing: is that they woke up to what happened with Godzilla 2014. So this is what happened. Number two is what happened Godzilla 2014. The whole people plot line, Bryan Cranston and his son and all this woman and there's a nurse and everybody's on the phone all the time. Who cares? So they came back for Godzilla King of the Monsters and they were just like, yeah, no, there's like humans doing some stuff, but most of the time it's monsters destroying everything. And that's what they learned from this. And it's quite clearly they've decided that one of the things you notice about this movie, and I'm sorry I'm gonna ruin it by attracting your attention to it, is that they're so confident with how this movie's going, they stop animating the characters when they're not talking. They're like Chuck E. Cheese animatronics. You'll see them in the background, and they're just they're not T-posing, but they're pretty close to it. Like Knuckles has this scene when they're in the living room. He's just standing there like. It's completely.
It's very interesting. It's very interesting you mentioned animatronics, because that could does like a big point in the film early on where they literally go to the Chow Garden in Japan, and that's actually a
Yeah.
big flex point of the film too. But so the
He looks
second one,
like a Pikachu.
yeah. So the second one wasn't viewed as favorably as the first one. It was still a decent film. It was still a pretty solid movie, but obviously just wasn't as good as the first one. Made about $400 million, so it's like there was still an audience for it. So it's like, hey, you know what? Let's do a third one, and we're gonna call this one Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Now, for you video game aficionados, this has nothing to do with the actual Sonic the Hedgehog 3 from the Genesis era. They go a little bit further in the timeline here to introduce, arguably, I don't think anyone would argue against it, the most popular post-Genesis Sonic character add-on of the series, which is
Yeah.
Shadow the Hedgehog. And Shadow the Hedgehog was the character that blew up in the basically the early 2000s with Sonic. They even gave him his own solo video game where he has guns and shoots things. And
He has a pump action AR-15. I love it.
yeah. By the way, they did give him a little handgun in the film. It's called kind of a callback. And I was kind of like, hoping that they would kind of like address the fact that he has a gun in the film, where it's like, where did he get a gun? Or it's like, who thought this was a good idea? Something like along those lines, kind of acknowledging this, like, oh yeah, we totally had
Shadow
our
has a gun. How come I don't get a gun? You know?
yeah
That would make
Shadow
everything way
voiced by
easier.
John Wick. Right?
Yeah, yeah. And so the other thing that I was impressed by is that they didn't lean into that. They didn't decide, okay, we're gonna like wink wink and nod to the audience with having Shadow have a John Wick shootout somewhere. And I'm really
Yeah.
glad they didn't do that. They kept it cartoony.
And I will address this here, double fat, once we get to the review part here for a second. But yeah, so they brought in Keanu Reeves, the voice, the Shadow the Hedgehog, and like I said, for the most part, they stayed pretty true to his backstory here. He was a hedgehog, the ultimate life form, who was being tested on by a shadow organization, a shadow government, if you want to say here. But in the context of this film, he was basically trapped and being experimented on, and his only friend was a little girl named Maria, a little blonde girl, and he befriends her. She's the only one that actually treats him good. And during a botched escape attempt, they end up shooting the little girl, and the girl dies. So now Shadow's just consumed with rage and vengeance, and he wants everything to burn because they killed his one and only friend. And that's kind of what leads us into Sonic the Hedgehog 3 here for the film. So Rick, as someone who is not well versed in Sonic the Hedgehog lore, did you watch the first two movies?
Yes, because you always get on my case about it. So I
Mm-hmm.
decided and I reviewed them, and I pretty much agree with you. I really enjoyed the first one. I thought the second one spent too much time in Hawaii and Rachel's wedding, and I'm like,
Yeah.
we're kind of wasting our time here, wasting our time with the polka dance or whatever that was. So yeah, I've seen the first two.
Yep. So now we're back here with this one, and like I said, for me early on, I think they really did take to heart all of the cons that people have with the second movie, and I was like, okay, let's do a lot less than that. So the human characters in this film have been, I wouldn't say completely reduced, but their roles have been significantly reduced than what we've seen in the first two films here. And I think that's
Oh yeah.
mostly because at this point, and I hate to break this to you, no one really cares that much about James Marsden outside of him being like the human father figure of like Sonic's character and having that bond. But when you're at Sonic the Hedgehog 3, people just want to see the Sonic related characters and aren't really too interested in the human characters. And I do think that they did a lot to cut out a lot of that needless drama and comedy that bogged down the first two movies. It's like, okay, hey, look, Shadow's here now. It's just going to be Shadow versus Sonic and some Robotnik stuff, and this is going to be our primary focus here.
Yeah, I mean that's probably one of the big draws. You have Shadow and Sonic facing off against each other, and you've got a pretty good team with Knuckles and Tails, so they've all worked very well. I was thinking that the actor who played Wade, he could have. I think he probably did his one scene in like maybe a day. You had
Mhm.
Marsden and what was it, Sumter? Tika part Sumter. I'm blanking out on her name.
Somebody I just had the names there just a second ago,
Yes.
but yeah, I'm blanking.
They were not in the movie. I mean, they were in the beginning and then at the end, and we popped up a bit. So we did lose a lot of the human characters. except for Robotnik and his number one henchman. And yes, to answer the question, yes, I am a big fan of Agent Stone. I have a soft spot for for him.
So I have to like remind everybody that Sonic, likewise Dragon Ball Z, suffered from the power scaling problem.
Yeah.
Is that as the lead characters, become more powerful, the characters that are not the lead characters do not become more powerful in the scale in which they were originally powered. And so the humans are a lot less effective than they were in the beginning because Sonic doesn't need to rely on them for anything more than a vehicle to get him to the scene of where the plot begins. And that's all they're used for now is Sonic's on a vacation, and that's why he's here now. And that's why the movie is happening here. The end. And so that's it. And so it's the same thing with like Piccolo and Yamcha and Tien in Dragon Ball Z. They don't have anything to do after the Android saga. They're just there to cheer on Goku and Vegeta as they beat the ass off of whatever showed up to screw up Earth. And so here we are with Sonic and Shadow, who can both go super. So,
and I was just going to mention that because it's ironic that this film is called Sonic the Hedgehog 3. And if you remember in the video game Sonic 3, they introduced power levels or super levels for both Tails and Knuckles. Power levels that they never went back to after they introduced it in Sonic the Hedgehog 3 30 years ago, right? So I don't know if we're ever going to see Hyper Knuckles or Super Tails in this series, but it will seem like you probably want to get back to that at some point as we start escalating here because, yeah, the Chaos Emeralds are in play, or the Master Emeralds, I should say, here are in play. And if you want them to be kind of, a useful figure here in the future, you're kind of going to have both of those guys in it, especially when you're trying to tell a story about, quote unquote, Team Sonic, right?
Well, and that's what happened. Well, that's what happens is that in this Sonic X showed us, if you remember, gotta go fast, faster, 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 Sonic X. That show showed us nobody gives a crap about the humans. If Sonic's not making out with them and you can't make a meme out of that, they're not. We don't want to hear about it. We want all of our colorful friends doing all these crazy things. Rick, if you don't know, in the games, for some reason, the Japanese thought it would be hilarious or smart to have Sonic make out with human girls, and I have no idea why, but it became an instant meme that as soon as a human female shows up in any Sonic property, Sonic will be making out with her before the credits roll. It's just so bizarre.
Was this catering to furries?
No, they just for whatever reason they just thought that if he has an interaction with human, he should have like that romantic hero thing. Just totally forgetting.
I don't know what happened. Like seriously, like once the Dreamcast flopped, I don't know what happened with Sonic the Hedgehog and like the whole lore and the backstory, but it just seems like
cocaine happened.
I mean, it quite literally, once they licensed Sonic to Nintendo, it was like they just gave up. That's really what it just felt like.
I don't know about gave up. They got way cooler, in my opinion, because they were like, you know what Sonic can do now? He can do 3D things. You know what 3D things are? We don't. So we're just going to make it up. You know what Sonic can do now? He can run underneath Free Willy. You want to know why? Because it's 3D, and that's why he could do that. And that was their only excuse. It's 3D, so he could do it.
He's now magnetically attracted to rings, and he can just like fly through the air.
He turns into a werewolf with stretchy arms. It's just Sonic does whatever he needs to do.
Sonic's a werewolf. Shadow's on a motorcycle shooting AK-47s, and then it's like
demons from space. But we got to watch the Snap Cube thing in Discord, man. It's hilarious. We've got to watch that. It's so funny. But yeah, like the Shadow game, like to bring it back to these characters, the Shadow game, okay, played a huge role in how they characterized Shadow in this. Like they pulled, I think, a couple of scenes from it almost directly, like from the Shadow game. It was like, wow, I'm really surprised that they were bold enough to pull like from that game was like the hot topic of Sonic games, okay? Like it was like very, very, very like in your face. Like I'm an edgy teenager. I don't obey the rules, but I also don't break them. And it's just like it's just
with like some angsty Rage Against the Machine song playing in the background, of course.
But it doesn't swear, and it tells you to do your homework. It's really strange.
So, Rick, do you have any idea what these little bastards are?
those weren't the things that were dancing around the chow garden or the cheat
The
garden or the
cafe
Yeah.
thingy, yeah.
So
yes,
from a normie perspective, you would probably think that these are just like Chuck E. Cheese characters, right?
yes. I
Oh,
mean, I
Those are
assume that's
gay
what it was.
demons.
they come explicitly through the use of porn.
Oh my
Yeah, these are
god.
the things that possess you when you look at bathing suits in video games.
Yeah, when you look at characters twerking in video games, you get possessed by one of these things. But no, so these are chows, and I guess as a money marketing technique that they did in the late, or not to say late 2000, early 2000s, they was like, hey, what if we gave Sonic its own like chia pet thing where you just like give them like little crystals that they eat, and then
It's Pokemon. They
Mhm.
literally saw the success of Pokemon and they were like, how do we put that? How do we make money on that? And then
And they
Team
made a
Sonic
joke
was like,
about
I
it.
got you.
And they made a
Yep.
joke about it in the movie.
Yep.
Yep. Anyway, where Knuckles calls Tails Pikachu, and then they mention Detective Pikachu, like in the film. Chaos Karate and Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was addictive. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we literally turned these things into like a little blood sport in Sonic 2 Adventure 2. Especially Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, if you guys remember that video game.
Yep.
That's when you can like, they basically evolve on how you treat them and like what characters like are nice to them. So if you like smash one of them into like a wall a bunch of times, it's going to turn into the one on the right. Yeah, if you actually like treat it nicely with like the good characters, turns into the one on the left. And then they thought that the little girls are going to love this because they're so cute. Yeah, the Tamagotchi market was booming at the time. I don't hate. That's another unfortunate layover from the 1990s that we would not talk about, just like Limp Bizkit or Linkin Park. But yeah, so that's what these things were like in the film. So I don't know if there's an actual Chow Garden in Japan. Like I was like, it could be a real thing or could just be a bit just for the movie, one way or another. Because I mean, like it's Sonic, it's Japan. I'm pretty sure it's popular out there. But
It's
so
possible. I mean, they do have a Hello Kitty land. I will say that what's great about this is that this is something that Sonic fans would enjoy seeing, and those of us who have never played the game won't get the joke, but we'll still be able to appreciate it because it's well introduced. It's like, oh look, they have a literal Chow Garden, and I thought it was like some Japanese thing that they have that's very
oh, this is
Japanese and
like Hello
bizarre.
Kitty.
Something. Well, another version or another thing, but but it works. It works on both levels. It works for those of us who don't know much of anything about the Sonic world, and it works for those of you who do.
So this comes immediately after Shadow was introduced, and he kicks the absolute crap out of these two because he has chaos energy, and they make a big point about chaos energy, like in the film. So they have to regroup at Japanese Chuck E. Cheese to figure out who they're up against, and that's basically where they were told the backstory. It's like, yeah, we had this thing in a government facility for 50 years, and now it's awakened, and we killed its young girlfriend 50 years ago, and it's pretty pissed. So we need you guys to save us all, or we're all gonna die. And that's I think kind of the starting point for the plot of this film.
One of the things I really enjoy about this is that it follows Sonic's child logic. The character in this, it follows the character's child logic, and I appreciate that. They didn't take him to some military bunker where kids are going to lose their attention and get bored, and their little brains are going to wax over while they were watching it. Some big hologram thing that displays Shadow, and he's spinning around, and some general's like, Snake, we need you to break it. It's it's not like that. It's instead, it's in the middle of a Chuck E. Cheese with all this sensory overload is happening. So the kids like have their ADD fidget spinnered in their brain while they're getting the necessary information to know what the hell is happening. And I really appreciate the child psychology behind that. Like that's really smart, guys.
Yeah,
I was thinking to myself,
there was a kids party going on at the same time.
Yeah,
I was thinking to myself, I was kind of surprised they didn't start playing like Gangnam Style like during that. But then I remember that's K-pop, and we're in Japan, and I don't know if that's gonna start like some East Coast West Coast beef between those two nations.
Buddy, most of the kids watching this were born after that song came out. Okay, like hold on, man. It's 2024, man. That song came out in like 2010, 2012,
2012-ish. I want to say, yeah. So yeah, those kids are probably like 12 years old now. Little menaces to society.
That was 2012. Yeah, exactly. So they're old enough now to be 12 years old. Okay, if they were born when that song came out, so they're old enough to be watching this jig. That's classical music to them.
Yeah, they might have been conceived while their parents were listening
Right.
to that
Yeah.
song.
Open mom's Gangnam Style.
Yeah, I don't want to hear your mom's sexual history based on that song. But here's Jim Carrey as
Speaking of sexual history, oh my gosh.
Ooh, yeah.
This is Frat Thor, by the way. I'm not.
Fat
They're
Thor,
never gonna
yeah.
convince me. They're Frat Thor. Remember, not fat. Frat Thor. There's Fat Thor when he's trying to help things, and there's Frat Thor when he's hanging out with Rock Guy and yelling at 12-year-olds on Xbox. That I couldn't get beyond that. I was like, just give Chris Hemsworth a check for stealing his look from that movie.
I mean, they could have put Chris Hemsworth in this film, be the best film he's been a part of in several years. So there you go. But yeah, so Jim Carrey is back here. He's playing not one but two characters. He's playing obviously Dr. Robotnik, and then he's playing his grandfather Gerald Robotnik, who I believe they said was like 110 in the movie here. But one thing I'll say about Jim Carrey is that, you know, obviously, I think the role of Dr. Robotnik, especially the more comedic aspects of it, plays very, very well with his character and his personality. I did feel like in the second film that he was graining towards that point of being so over the top that he's now just getting annoying. And even though he's playing two characters in this film, I feel like that side of his personality is still somewhat subdued in this film for a good reason. Because, like I said, he's playing two characters, like there's a kind of an over the top angle between them. It's like, oh yeah, I never knew you existed for like 50 years. So it's like, okay, well, what do you want to do? It's like, well, I'm gonna do what any person who did just found their grandfather. I want to go eat ice cream and go push myself on a swing or stuff like that. So it's like it does turn out to be a more serious storyline as the film like progresses here, because the whole thing is that they're both super smart, they're both super intelligent, but of course, no, the grandfather's lying to him about his true intentions, because Robotnik just wants to take over and rule the world, while Gerald just wants to destroy it completely. And that's kind of the big conflict between the two here. But Rick, what's your take on Jim Carrey in this movie? Is he better or worse than the first two?
Oh, I think he's better than the second one. Here he was doing. I thought he was doing great work, and I enjoyed the fact that he was able to have fun with the fact they even mentioned it. You know, it's almost like the same actor playing two different roles in a movie, and after a while, you kind of forget that it's, you know, Jim Carrey and he's together. So I thought it was fun because he's also playing like the more deranged, mad scientist grandfather, and here he's just a megalomaniac, but you know, he doesn't want to literally go around killing. He just wants to kill Sonic. He doesn't want to kill the whole world. He wants to conquer it. So I thought it was a lot of fun. And here's the thing. Normally I get hung up on scenes that don't add anything to the plot, but I found that whole montage of their day together charming and funny. And I was like, this is actually amusing, even though that whole thing where you know, where they're spending the day together and making up for 50 years or whatever, it adds nothing to the plot. It's irrelevant. It doesn't further anything in the story. But I was like, when I left the theater, I was like, I don't want to cut that scene because it's so funny. And I even like that part where poor Agent Stone constantly wants to get in, but he's constantly frozen out. It's like, I found all of that amusing. So it's like, I find it funny. I thought he did a great job, and you even got to see, dare I say, the humanity of Dr. Robotnik at the end.
Yeah.
So no, I thought he did a great job. He was
It's
over the
like,
top
no,
enough.
he's still bad, but it's
Yeah.
like he's not psychotic. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, you know, he just wants to, you know, rule the world with all his little cool gadgets and be like the smartest person on the planet, but he doesn't want to kill everyone. That's not his objective.
Yeah, he just wants to kill Sonic. That, I mean, just one. So he'd
Mhm.
be happy with that. So yeah,
Technically, he just wants to skin Sonic.
oh,
Technically.
Yeah.
he does
And
too.
get high off of his hair too. 'Cause that's
Yes.
the
Isn't that weird, right? That's a little bit of an odd one for me. I'm really not sure. I know it was funny because of Jim Carrey's like physical acting, but the implications of him being addicted to Sonic's little energy that builds up there really, really bothers me. Now, a good way to pay this off, right? In the next movie is because of his overexposure, he can now run fast for very short periods of time after he's hung out with Sonic. They share a little bit of Sonic speed force or whatever you want to call it, you know? That would be a neat way to pay that off. But for now, having him addicted to that, that is really weird. Really
Well,
weird. Again,
that
it's
was.
the whole lot of like mixed messages with this movie that weren't intentional, that they just kind of forgot about
But
when they were
but
talking about it, I
but in
guess.
fairness, he was already addicted to la última pasión, so he needed something else to get his
Uh,
fix.
he he was addicted to Mexican women?
No, la última pasión, that TV novela, that telenovela that they were
Oh
just
yeah, yeah.
watching
No,
last
you're
night.
right.
I
Yeah,
know
there's
again it's all over the top, but I found it
so
funny.
because Cider hasn't seen the movie. So when Robotnik was getting fat in his cave, like just like eating
Oh.
bonbons and then pizza, he was watching like a really over the top telenovela that he got addicted to. Like that was like the only thing that he cared about for like a good few years, which is like that whole storyline,
Yeah.
which I thought was pretty funny. So I can't knock it too much there. Rob, not Rob, Rick, what do you think about the you guys look alike. No, what do you think about the introduction of Shadow here as someone who's not familiar kind of with the video games? Do you think they did a good job with his backstory and introduction?
Yes, I like the fact that they really just cut to the chase. I mean, when you see
Hmm.
him in his lair, uh, they storm in, the power just goes out, or he's able to escape, and it's like okay, and then he just escapes and he starts attacking, and so I really don't need a long introspective story. We get that later in a nice little set of montage or bits where Maria keeps popping up. It gives a very beautiful little message about how the light goes on even though the star is gone. I actually thought that was actually rather moving. That was a nice line. No, they did a good job. I didn't have any. I didn't have any confusion as to who he was, what his motivations were. So I like the fact that in the first part, it's just bang, 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 bang. Let's just get to it. Let's just get to it. Let's just get to it. That was probably the part of the problem with the second one. They just seemed to just keep going back and back and just adding things that I didn't care about. Here, we got straight to the story. I didn't
Yeah,
worry.
this movie's actually shorter than the second one too, which I think was the second one. It was really just I think a lot of creative mistakes in that one because remember the first movie was only about 99 minutes. The second one was about 2 hours and 2 minutes, and then this one they shaved it back down to like about hour 50 minutes, hour 45, somewhere around that. It was like so I think they realized there was a lot of mistakes in that second one that they didn't repeat. Which I look, I mean, how many times have we complained about Hollywood not learning from their mistakes? And this seems to be one of the very few franchises out there that actually takes heart to the mistakes or to the things that people point out is wrong with it and actually look to improve on them on top of all that. So,
Yeah, I mean, again, we got everything told real fast. We didn't have to. I mean,
Ha!
from
Nice
when
pun.
not intentional. We go from Shadow coming all the way to the unholy union of Robotnik and the Sonic team relatively quick. We don't waste time. We just more or less, and no pun intended again, we just speed through things. And I like that because it gives me enough information and it trusts me to keep up. And I don't have to worry about anything else. I think the part where it actually slowed down was when we had that day, day in the life between grandpa and grandson. But again, I was so charmed by it. It's like, yeah, I'll keep it. I'll keep it in the movie.
Well, and the thing about that introduction scene is that a lot of these movies, they'll try to amp up the origin that actually happened, the original piece of media that inspired what they've created. And this does a very good job of not trying to do better, but instead trying to integrate it into the setting they've created. So rather than having the big, huge army showdown that was happening in Sonic Adventure 2 when Shadow shows up with the Chaos Emerald and that whole saga begins, he is instead dispatched into the middle of a city again, into the middle of chaos with destruction all around him, where he is confronted by Sonic as a mysterious figure that overpowers them. And so that did a very, very good job of not trying to do better than the video game, but trying to acknowledge the gravity of that confrontation from the video game. I appreciate that. They could have introduced They could have had Shadow show up and smush Sonic's face into his food at the Chow Garden. Could have absolutely have just could have gave him a swirly. Could have done everything possible other than that original introduction, and instead they did it, and it's very smart. I really like it. Again, as you guys have relayed, they seem to understand their power level with this movie. They didn't try to make it really dumb for kids. Again, like underestimating children's ability and desire to care, and they didn't overestimate it with like Dragon Ball Evolution, where they were like, "Oh, okay, man, we gotta make sure that like we gotta explain everything outright and make sure it's watered down in real life enough," you know. So, really a good job, really good job.
What'd you think about Kirsten Ritter in the movie? Or as we have to call her around here, Jessica Jones. Or if you're really old school, that girl from Breaking Bad. Or if you're really old school, that girl from that was an ABC show that failed after like 2 seasons. Don't Trust the Bee in Room 23.
I have no idea who this woman is.
You haven't seen her in like anything?
No, I don't think so. And to be perfectly honest, I wasn't quite sure what she was in the movie. She was some Rockwell.
Yeah,
Rockwell.
director, a high-ranking official in the military organization, Guardians of Unit Nations, aka Gun.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that awful pun. I mean, that's the way it was in the second one. I don't know if that's related to the video game,
Oh, yes, it is. Yes, Gun.
but
Gun created Sonic.
I,
Or
I will
Shadow,
I
rather.
will say
Not
I will
Sonic.
say this. When I saw Sonic 2, obviously not knowing much about Sonic the video games, I had the same reaction Rachel had. Like, gun? Seriously? So no, I had no idea who this person is. So I have no real opinion as to who she is or what she is. So yeah, I didn't even look at the heading. Yes, I just remember Rockwell because I was thinking, is she related to Norman Rockwell? That's all. That's my first thought.
I'm surprised you didn't go with Sam Rockwell. It's kind of the layup reference there, but yeah, I mean, she was had a minor role in the film. I mean, she's only in it for a few scenes, but it was like, oh yeah, there she is. I guess she's still doing stuff because I mean, at this point, they're not going to do another Jessica Jones thing on Disney Plus, so you're not going to hold out on any of that. So it's like, hey, get out there and do something,
Again,
right?
yeah, again, a lot of the human characters are not a big part of this movie. I mean, you had Rachel and her husband pop in basically real quick. Like they were basically cameos. And you had to kind of go about it by, oh, transform. I'm gonna change, change basically shapeshifters. And yeah, there they pop out and yeah, they get a little bit. Good for them to have like a little paycheck and future Comic Con appearances, but they weren't really relevant. They could have just been cut altogether from the movie. But I guess if you're going to have them, might as well have them and use them for a little bit.
I want to go over shift to the ending of this film here, where basically they find out that Gerald and Sonic Shadow just want to destroy the entire Earth and blow everything the smithereens, right? So that gets us to the ending where Sonic, after Tom gets hurt, he doesn't get killed, but he does get hurt, loses all sensibility. It's like, you know what? I'm gonna go get the Master and Emerald. I'm gonna turn into Super Sonic, and I'm gonna go fly out into space and beat the crap out of Shadow. And there's a lot of, if you guys, like I said, remember Sonic 2 Adventure, which I believe was the GameCube game. There's a lot of odes to to that whole fight scene. They even start playing at some point the literal boss music, the final boss music of the fight, where Super Shadow and Super Sonic team up to fight the prototype in the film. Like that whole thing is in there as well. So they do, like I said,
Learn?
Yes, that's literally the song. Live and Learn's the one that they start
Oh,
playing.
I'm so glad. That's such an iconic song. They did everything right. Good for them.
Yep. So, and that leads to, Robotnik, for the first time playing off his hero side, because he realizes that, he needs to stop his grandfather. So, he does a pretty good play, and with the assist of Tails and Knuckles, who, now I'll say this, if you are big fans of Tails and Knuckles, they do disappear at a certain point towards the end, because obviously this is more of a story about Shadow and Sonic, because their stories is the one that's paralleled most throughout the team of the film, which, like I said, if you're a bigger fan of them, you're not going to see them as much in this movie. Not to say they're completely removed from it, but like I said, it's the Hedgehogs here that are the main focus characters here. And like I said, we do kind of get closure with Sonic and Shadow, and it's left on a cliffhanger ending. Let's just put it that way, where it's like, let's be honest, none of these guys actually die, especially in the Sonic universe. They'll all come back at some point in time here. But what did you think about the ending, Rick?
It does it does work, and I love the scene where Robotnik, grandfather and grandson are fighting. It balances well the kind of comic elements, like when they're grabbing each other's mustaches, and then also being like a little more serious. So I thought it worked well there. The scene, actually, the scene where Robotnik acknowledges his, his best henchman, like, was it?
Mm-hmm.
It's not a sycophant, but a sickle friend. For some reason, that I was just like, that sounds awful funny. Like, why am I
Yeah.
laughing? It's a terrible. It's a
It was a cute little line that actually made sense. It's like not acknowledging him as like a friend, but as a sickle friend. It was like, okay, that's actually pretty funny.
And look, I thought that Robotnik had died. I thought so, in that big spaceship that even has a little mustache, which I love the detail that they put into this movie. And you get like the ending, and you get like the little teaser for a Sonic 4. I don't know if I need a Sonic 4, but I thought the ending worked well because you got this very moving. I mean, it manages to be moving and it manages to be funny. And so it hits you, adult and child. It works well. I liked how the movie ended. Though I thought Robotnik's end was it seemed pretty definite, but if they can find a way, like he finds an escape hatch at the last moment, I don't know.
Well, that's Eggman's thing. That's always his thing. Is that he's like the Joker. The minute you think he's dead and gone, like he blew in the first event in Sonic CD, right? They blow up a whole like moon-sized base that was chained to Mobius, or else it would fly off into space because it was so big. So yeah, no, and they blew up that with Eggman inside of it, and he was in the next game. So yeah, no, he's notorious for like surviving inexplicably and then somehow like building up, amassing
Or
even the
maybe,
bigger
maybe
threats.
if there
So
is a 4, maybe they won't even bother explaining it. Maybe they will just say,
he'll
what?
just be there. Yeah.
Yeah,
He'll just be watching his telenovelas and it's really he'll look right into the camera and say, "No, I'm not gonna tell you how." And he just goes on the rest of the movie. That's I'm not gonna tell
And
you how.
and you know
The
what?
rest of the
Well, and
movie.
the fans and those of us who are not, fans of the video game will accept it. Because we're not gonna
Yeah.
need that. We're not gonna need like
That's
a great,
Eggman.
yeah, we're not gonna need a great detailed explanation about it. It
Yeah.
was like, oh, okay, you just survived. We'll just take it, and that's it. Move on.
The thing is that Sonic very much has the Lex Luthor problem with Eggman, is that he has a myriad of other villains, but the only one that really seems to fit him the best is this fat, bald man with a huge mustache.
Mm-hmm.
And it just always seems to come back to that asshole every time.
Well, keep in mind, so in the first two movies, I think at the end of the first one, Robotnik got lost in like the mushroom land, like the mushroom land. And it's like, yeah, well, for any other man, he'll probably die here, but because I'm super smart, I'll probably make my way out of here in about 4 to 6 months, right? And then he just like reappears like at the end of the first one. Then the second one, it's like, yeah, we all think that he dies on the giant, machine or whatnot, but it's just assumed that he probably just found his way out of there because, he's so super smart. So they'll just do the same thing here with this one again. It's like he's a super genius. He found some BS way to save himself from the explosion. So I mean, they're going into it.
I say it'll go to what my number one golden rule is. Something will happen if the plot requires it to. Like, and in here, I'm not going to mind if there's an actual Sonic 4. I won't mind if they never explain how he escapes or survives.
Yes.
Well, DK brings up a good point. Metal Sonic is another huge kind of anchor antagonist for Sonic. So Sonic 4 could have something to do with like parodying Terminator, where
now
Metal
correct me if
Sonic
I'm
is
wrong.
leading-
I might have like a fever dream here, but wasn't Metal Sonic in one of the first two movies, or am I completely misremembering the
Not
first
to
two
my
movies?
knowledge.
I
we
don't
didn't-
remember. I don't remember anything like
No.
that in
Okay.
the first two.
Well, to answer Cider's question there, real quick. So at the end of this film, you get the end credit scene, and the end credit scene is basically a preview to Sonic 4, which they have confirmed they are working on. It'll be out in a couple of
Yes.
years, but Basically, it's Sonic in the woods. He gets surrounded by Metal Sonic, so you do see Metal Sonic towards the end. And then he looks around, there's like an entire army of Metal Sonics all around him.
Okay.
And then obviously a shadowy figure comes to save Sonic at the last minute, who reveals himself to be Amy. Amy and Metal Sonic are both teased for the next Sonic movie, which would be Sonic 4 coming out in a couple years.
I got my fingers crossed that these guys sat back and they said, okay, we got away with like making a Sonic Adventure 2. Let's see if we can take Dragon Ball Z Cooler's Revenge and turn it into a Sonic movie. And Metal Sonic is like a discarded machine that replicated himself after coming in contact with some space thing, right? They just go full ripoff. And that would be the best thing they could possibly do, is just completely remove Robotnik from the equation and make the movie about his creations going awry and seeking external revenge on Sonic. Now that would be great, because then Shadow has to help him, right? You know, we won't get the "why does he keep punching me in the dick" scene, but man, that would be funny. I mean, you don't remember that from the Dragon Ball Z Abridged?
I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I think the last Dragon Ball Z Abridged that I watched was, I think it was right the end of the Cell saga. So if they went any further than that, it's been a while.
Oh no, it was
since
the movie. They made a parody of the Revenge of Cooler movie where Metal Cooler showed up. And Vegeta's like, why does he keep punching me in the
dick? Okay, now I remember. Okay, yeah, I get it.
That would be great if they could parody that somehow. Like, why does he keep punching me in the knee? You know, like something to play up to that. That would be great.
I see it now.
I hope they go Revenge of Cooler with it. It would be awesome.
Doba Fett says they kind of undermined Metal Sonic in the mid-credit scene. Well, first of all, it was a bunch of Metal Sonic, so they could have just been copies of the actual Metal Sonic. And I wouldn't say that, because there's a possibility that if they're bringing Metal Sonic in for Sonic 4, which seems like what they're doing, they can also bring in Metal Overlord as well. So if you guys remember Metal Overlord in the Sonic Lore 2, that could literally end up being the boss of the next film. So who knows how far they take it into this, if they're going to start introducing like Rouge the Bat or Big the Cat or something like that.
Well,
but yeah.
Okay, you can't. What are they gonna do with? Okay, what are they gonna do with Big? He literally does nothing.
Mm-hmm.
That's his thing. Is he does nothing. Okay, and anyway, what would be great, right? So you have your Metal Sonic army. You have this angst going on, all this stuff that's divorced from Robotnik going on, stuff like that. But instead of going and leaning into like introducing these characters we already know, right? We get Rouge, of course, but in the Sonic Frontiers game, there was Robotnik's like AI daughter was introduced. That he created this girl that controls ancient technology for him, and she's like this complete AI construct. Now that would be an interesting thing, that she's commanding the Metal Sonic army to get revenge for her father's death. Now that would be pretty neat.
And they could do that. I mean, there's a lot of ways they can go. There's still a whole bunch of lore and characters that they haven't explored yet. And hopefully we stick with the good stuff and not the werewolf stuff. So,
that would be hilarious if he has a nightmare where he turns into like Were Sonic, and he's like, I had a franchise-ending nightmare. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
But speaking of Big the Cat.
Just some kind of reference. Like, oh man, I'm so glad that was just a dream and it didn't actually happen.
Yeah, it was actually real, and I did that, and that totally ruined everything that came after.
Mm-hmm.
This is the longest 2 minutes of your life.
Want it, have it, need it. Why?
If you've played any of the Sonic games involving Big the Cat, you know.
It's right here. You can see it. You can smell it. You can taste it. It's real. It's in front of your face. You can get it. Grab it. Grab it.
Is that a hit?
Froggy, it's right here. Come on, Froggy. Yeah, you want it.
Nope, he does not want it.
Oh, he wants it.
Oh, he wants it. He wants it. He's into it.
Oh my God!
Second bite.
You literally have to complete this in the game.
Oh! Froggy, where'd you go? There he is. There you were.
Coming in for another nibble and leave.
Froggy. What? The garbage, man!
He just breaks the line on you.
The fishing pole
has been tossed away.
We're literally going to have to explain to Rick the entire lore of why the
Yes.
cat is basically a functioning retard. That's too much.
I don't know why he's like that, but that's just the
Traumatic
character.
brain injury.
I'll say this. So far, the 3 Sonic movies have not
Yeah.
lost me in terms of plot and character and who these people and figures are. So if they keep that up, maybe in the 4th one, if they introduce all of these other characters, I won't be lost. So they've done a good job.
I will say this just real quick, and then we'll get to final thoughts here. All 3 of these films, even though, like I said, we kind of run down the second one as not being like the best, all 3 of these are enjoyable movies. And I feel like with the target audience of this, it's like, yeah, you're gonna have some old school Sonic fans who are gonna want to see this too, but you're also gonna have a lot of families that want to see this too as well. And the biggest theme about these movies have been families and kind of positive messaging, especially towards a younger audience, right? So this is the type of movie where we talk about all this perverted stuff that comes out of like Disney and Netflix and Warner Brothers. It's like, if you're a family and you just want to take your kids to go see a movie, you don't have to worry about them trying to like indoctrinate them in some kind of weirdo nonsense. And it's a franchise that's well known, that's well respected. You don't have to worry about them going, completely off the rails. Everyone knows Sonic. Everyone loves Sonic. It's marketable. It's relatable. It's identifiable, and it really hits home with its target audience, which is families. This is a great family movie. This movie is a big improvement on the second one. I really, really enjoyed it. I wouldn't call it a great film, but I do think it's a really, really good film. I do think that people who are going to watch it are going to like it. My rating for this movie, I have to give it a 3.5 out of 5. That's where I sit here with this film. You can argue whether this is the best one out of the 3. I wouldn't disagree with that one. But it's definitely better than the second one. I could say that one pretty solidly there too. And I'll go with Rick's final thoughts here, then we'll circle back around the cider.
I'll also give it a 3.5. I did enjoy it. I liked Jim Carrey in it. I liked the fact that it was silly without being stupid. So it knows its target audience. It like you said, it's families. I think they'll be entertained. The smaller kids will like the bright colors and the action. I think the older kids will like kind of the more positive elements about, the importance of family and doing what is right. I do have one caveat, and since it involves the death of a minor, that, yeah, with Maria, it that gives me pause to take smaller kids, because I don't know, even though you don't see it, it's not graphic.
Yeah,
that's perfect. Just
it's
off
implied,
bat.
but at the same
Yes.
time, it is a big part of Shadow's character and kind of why he's doing all this. So it's like you do kind of have to have it in there at the same time too. So
Yes. I mean, I'm glad. I mean, they didn't show it, and you do kind of see her, like you see them in the shadows about that. No pun intended. But when I was watching it, that was like my one thing that did kind of make me wonder, if I had younger kids, even though they like Sonic, would that make them a little uncomfortable seeing like a child, not a child. I mean, she's like what, 12, maybe 12, 14, somewhere about that age. I can't quite gauge her age. So that was my one thing that kind of kept it from going higher. But it's already at a 3.5. So it's still pretty good. I think this is better than the second one. And I didn't mind the fact that we didn't get to see James Marsden and was it Tom and Maddie. I didn't mind. I sort of like, oh yeah, Wade in his one brief scene was there. And I have to admit, I do have a soft spot for Agent Stone. I kind of figure I'm kind of like that, in that I would be a loyal henchman forever, just like waiting for my master to come and tell me what to do. So I enjoyed it. I thought Jim Carrey was great in it. I liked the characters. I liked the story. I liked the way that they worked together. Everything was fun, pretty zippy. So yeah, 3.5 for me. I don't know if it'll be my 10 best, but it's certainly much better than a lot of the things that you've made me watch. So yeah, we're ending the year on a high note.
Yep. Cider, any last questions? Yeah, about the Sonic franchise or the movie in here? Oh boy, this is gonna be bad.
I think it's okay to be underwhelmed as an adult with this series, okay? I
Hmm.
think it's okay for this one to be for kids. Like when it comes to Marvel and the MCU, I think you're doing a disservice to those characters by making them dumber for the sake of trying to appeal to children. And I always think that's a bad idea. To even Stan Lee said it was a bad idea to produce dumb media for kids. Don't underestimate
Yeah.
children. And so this movie doesn't do that, but it does keep its target demographic totally at the center of its performance. There's no mistaking that this is made for the 8 to 14-year-old market space. It is specifically made for boys too. There is no mistaking that it is meant to appeal to 8 to 14-year-old boys. Now, that is a wonderful thing to hear for a media creator like myself because that's where I mainly aim most of the stuff I make. Why is that good news to me? Is because Sonic once again is revitalizing the children's media market, whereas previously it had been completely besieged by people who were in arrested development, not the TV show, but like in the mental state of being forever 12 years old despite being 42 on the outside.
Oh
And
yeah.
so that's why I
Oh yeah.
post this picture right here. It's okay to be an adult and not enjoy this because it kind of looks foolish to be an adult Sonic fan and to be like completely like over the moon angry at this because it didn't do justice to a certain part of it. And not that anybody's wrong for being upset with it, but just remember the temperature of the room. That's all I ask is that this movie did not try to be the MCU. It did not try to both appeal to the 40-year-old comic book fan who's been invested with this since it first showed up. And it didn't, while simultaneously trying to appeal to a Zoomer audience. It strictly sat down and said, we are aiming to the 8 to 14-year-old market of 2024. We will pay homage to where this media came from, but that is strictly where our focus is staying, take it or leave it. And I have to
Yeah.
appreciate that. I really have to appreciate it. They didn't try to give you a buffet of, hey, Dad, do you remember Sonic Adventure 2? You know, they didn't try to do that. They tried to make sure that the inspiration was there for the kids to understand and have their own version of it.
And it's sad
Yeah.
too on another level where it's like, obviously this is Sega's baby, right? So they're not gonna let anything screw with their biggest cash cow, right? And if it wasn't a Japanese property and it wasn't their biggest cash cow, they probably would have found some way to bastardize this franchise a long time ago, but they just don't have the innate ability, which is a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. I don't say it's a bad thing, but just kind of a sad reality. If it wasn't, if he didn't have the best Yakuza Japanese lawyers in the game protecting this IP with their dear lives, then it's like we're looking at a much worse situation than we are before. So
Yeah, I
I
mean that's right. As Cider would say, I agree with him, and I'll say that yes, they know their target audience. As I often say, they know their target audience. They play to the strengths while putting in little bits that I guess you guys who know the Sonic universe much more than I do will like. And I, as someone who was not into the Sonic universe or played the video games, I wasn't lost. So it has a
there.
wide appeal. As a wide
That's
appeal, I give him credit.
excellent news. That's what I want to hear about media that's coming out now. Like we're gonna have to deal with stuff that's been in the works for a while. It's come out because this stuff is just woke era stuff that's left over. But to
mhm.
hear that this movie is leading the way with just trying to entertain a younger audience and to also make sure that the parents in the room aren't like crying bored. That's an excellent, because that's all you got to do. Tell people all the time, don't listen to Ryan Johnson with this usurp expectations thing. Reward expectations. If Shadow shows up, reward the expectation that he will become an ally by the end of the movie, or at least lean in that direction, have some type of shadow of hope there. And
Yeah.
again,
Boom,
like
boom.
that's the effort you've got to like imply here going forward because Sonic did that. Your expectations were absolutely rewarded with this movie. Robotnik was Robotniky. Knuckles was his usual knuckle-headed self. Tails was helpful but ultimately useless, which is usual. And Sonic was his usual, I'm overconfident. I got set on my ass. I'm going to go back to being overconfident again. Just usual, just his usual Sonic self. And again, all rewarding your expectations. It's great.
Yeah, trust your audience. That's the one thing here. Trust your audience, respect your audience, and you're going to have a very successful product. This was an enjoyable film. I liked this film. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot better than some of the so-called artsy intellectual films that most people would think I would like, but just left me cold. This is fun. It's like I said, zippy. It's enjoyable, and you'll enjoy it if you've never played the game. You'll enjoy it if you've not seen the movie. And I'll say that I can imagine Cider. I can imagine that Rob would wear that outfit when he goes see it. Once he gets away from the snowstorm, that's how he will dress when he goes sees Sonic 3. That is
Oh,
his
the red
usual
and
garb.
black. Okay.
No, that little blue Sonic outfit. That's how he usually goes to
Oh,
the
oh,
movies.
oh, all in the Sonic costume.
Yes,
Yes,
in the
the
Sonic
adult
costume.
Sonic
That
fan.
is how Rob Otto will go
Oh,
to see the movie.
okay.
Once the snowstorm ends. That's how he usually dresses.
Yeah.
He's not here, so we can make fun of him.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
He's not here to
He
defend
won't.
himself.
He won't watch it in the replay. So
No, of course not. He never watches it because he knows I'll be on.
Well, we know this. We got 3 more episodes left, and we're going with the year-end list. So the next 3 episodes will be our mid list, our best list, and then our worst list. So next week here on this show, episode 98, we're going to talk about the most mid movies of 2024. And then what does that mean? What does it mean, mid movies? These are basically movies that are not terrible. They're also not good. They're perfectly mid. So if we're looking at like a range here for these type of movies, we're looking at somewhere between like a 2.5 out of 5 to barely a 3 out of 5. Like just perfectly okay movies that came out in 2024. That's what we're gonna talk about next week here on this show. So let's go ahead and give you guys a chance to promote anything you got coming up. I know Rick's actively dying, so he has his cough button on right now. But why don't you tell people what you're working on?
Sorry, I'm getting better. Oh, I'm backed up in reviews, so I'm going to write reviews on Sonic 3, on Queer, on Emilia Perez, and on Craven the Hunter, and which I did see after you guys saw it, and a movie that not a lot of people know about called Dream World, which is about the author of Alice in Wonderland, Lewis Carroll, and then just trying to catch up on a lot of the screeners that they've sent me to try to have a best of, try to form my best of list, which should be hard given this year, and trying to see which films actually get left off my worst of, because I keep switching them. And where will Argyle fall? That's the question that we'll answer in a week or two. Where will Argyle fall in the worst list for me? So that's pretty much it. Thank you, everyone, and go see this movie. It's a delightful romp.
All right. Cider, thanks for joining us here on a Friday night. King Noticer, what do you got coming up?
just stuff over on Bounding. Check us out. We talk about stuff.
Fair enough. Let you know we got coming up Sunday. I'll be back here with the Bible Lens. We're talking about the world coming against Israel on the Bible Lens this Sunday. Tuesday we're gonna have a pretty fun bar room. I got a whole bunch of nostalgia videos that we'll play through, so we'll have a fun Christmas Eve. I think we're doing a 0-1 on Christmas Day. We'll have some games. I even have some ideas for games that we can talk about later on as well. And then like I said, next week we'll be talking about the mid movies of 2024. So we get to talk about all the perfectly mediocre films of the year, which is probably be my most entertaining list of the film. It's like, what did you like and then not like simultaneously? It's like, oh, here's a list of films that came out in 2024. And real quick, I did want to show you this before we left off here, but obviously we talked about Kirsten Ritter here, and this is just a scene from her canceled TV show, Don't Trust the Bee in Apartment 23. And here's I guess how she got her before she was on Breaking Bad. I want to say this is Breaking Bad, but this is basically where she got her big break.
Old ass is on the road. I've always wanted to go to a real life Hamptons lighthouse. In rainy weather and a fisherman's sweater. On a bike. With a sandwich and my thoughts.
I almost just hit you. I almost just lost control and hit you.
Oh, she's always been the same character. Neat.
Yes.
Okay.
But then, I mean, she was a junkie in Breaking Bad, so I mean, she's not junkie.
I guess she was a junkie in the Marvel one that I can't miss. Invincible.
No, she was a drunk in the Jessica
Oh, I'm
Jones.
sorry,
CV.
different type of substance abuse.
What
My apologies.
what we need for her to do is to play in a revamped Flying Nun. We need to get her to do that.
I don't know
To
about that.
to see her range.
But we are here at the end of the show, so I want to thank all you guys for joining us. But until then, adios, good night, and goodbye.